going to start chapter 4. You're going to notice that there are 4 sections to chapter 4. There's order of operations expert. We've done order of operations before, but it wasn't expert. It was like beginner and intermediate. Now we're going to expert. 4B, you'll notice, is algebraic expressions, 4C, tables of functions, and 4D, graphs of functions. So this is what your next test is going to look like. It's going to have 4 sections to it. Okay. All right. Today we're going to look at section 1-2. It's going to be chapter 1 in your textbook, section 2, and we're going to cover order of operations, right? You notice that when we do order of operations, a lot of times we come up with saying, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? The P stands for parentheses, yes. Now, parentheses can look different. A lot of times we see the parentheses look like this, but they can also look like that and be brackets, right? So when you're taking your notes, make sure that you put in your brackets. All right, the excuse is E, which stands for exponents. All right, so the exponent, here's an example of what it could look like 3 to the 2nd power. The 3 is the base, and the 2 is the exponent. You'll notice that my dear is in blue. And notice that both of the words are in blue. And the reason is because it's multiplication division from left to right, whichever one comes first, right? So if multiplication comes first, you do that first. If division comes before multiplication, you do the division first. It's whichever one is the line leader, whichever one is on the left-hand side first. And then finally, ANS for addition and subtraction. Again, that's from left to right. So if addition comes first, you do that first. If subtraction's first, you do that one first from left to right. Now, here's a problem that students tend to have. You'll notice that a lot of times, well, you'll see most of the time, multiplication division comes before addition and subtraction, which means you need to do any multiplication and division before you do addition and subtraction. Addition and subtraction is like the afterthought. Okay, and we'll use these as we go in examples, so you'll be okay when we get done. All right, let's take a look at the first problem. Notice that it says evaluate the expression. What does evaluate mean? What are you going to do with it? It's the answer. You're going to solve it. Very good. So you're going to solve it to come up with the answer. Okay. Notice that's going to be a vocabulary word. If you look off to the left-hand side of the room, you're going to notice I got some new vocabulary on those pumpkins. So you see domain, input, dependent variable, independent variable, evaluate, expression, order of operations. That's all the vocabulary for this chapter. It's also in Schoology. And so it's my expectation that you know what those words mean, and when I put them on an assessment or you see them on your ACTs or your plan tests or your Explore tests, you're going to know what they mean. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this. We're going to go down the list. First thing is parentheses. Do I got them? No. Do I have exponents? Yes, I do. 2 to the 2nd power is what? 4. Now, when you do this in your homework, my expectation is that you actually write down the original problem when you're doing your homework. So it's going to look like this when you do your homework. And we're going to do the exponent. So I get 4, like you said. So that's kind of what your homework's going to look like. All right, do I have parentheses? Do I have exponents? Now, do I have multiplication division? Yes. Which one comes first from left to right? Multiplication. So 30 times 2 is, very good, 60 divided by 4 minus 5. Okay, now we go back to our list again. Do I have parentheses? No. Do I have exponents? Do I have multiplication division? Yes. What do I got? That's correct. And what is that? Very nice. 15 and then minus 5, and I got one more operation and I get 10. When you do your homework, please circle your answer. Notice how I'm working up and down. And then when you go from that problem to the next problem, I'm going to ask you to skip a space. What happens is when you do your math and it's really, really in tight quarters, you tend to mess up. Okay, and I don't want that to happen to you. Questions on this one? Okay, let's go on and look at number 2. Again, if you're doing it in your homework, you would write down number 2. 16 minus 3, sorry, 2 cubed plus 4. All right, let's take a look at this now. Do I have parentheses? No. Do I have an exponent? Yes, I do. It's 2 cubed, right? And what do I get when I do 2 cubed?
12.
Okay, I see 16, I hear 12, I hear 9, 8. Well, let's take a look at it. What does 2 cubed mean? 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is? Times 2 is? It's 8. Okay? But that's a common misconception, and that's why we're doing it, guys. That's why we're here, right? You'll get it by the end of the year, let me tell you. All right. Do I have parentheses? Do I have an exponent? No. Do I have a multiplication division? Do I have addition subtraction? Which one comes first? Subtraction. So what do I get? 8 plus 4, and I get 12. Circle it. Questions? Okay. Let's move to the next. Again, if it's my homework, I would write down number 3, 4, and now that star is actually multiplication. Don't get confused with the hands-on equations. One student asked me before, Mrs. Medved, can I just put an X there because I feel more comfortable with an X? I don't care. Just be careful with a dot because sometimes the dot can look like a decimal. Yeah, and that can be confusing. So just be careful with that. All right, do I have do I have parentheses? No. Do I have an exponent? Yes. 5 squared is 25 because it's 5 times 5, right? Okay, do I have parentheses? Do we have an exponent? Do I have multiplication division? Which one? What do I get? Very good. And so then I just add. Questions on this? Pretty easy yet? It'll come. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next one. What would I do first? Yes, what do kids tend to do? Distribute. Notice that it's not distribute. It's order of operations, which tells you to do what's in the parentheses first. 9 plus 3 is 12. Times 6 is 72. And you'll see one like that on your assessment. I'm going to try to get you. I am. Now, let's say you're taking an ACT or an Explore test and you got this answer. Could you use the distributive property to check your answer? Absolutely. You'd get the same answer. So that's why we teach you 2 different techniques. So when you get into a problem on your ACT or your MCA or your NWEA, you can check it and make sure that you're correct. Okay? All right, let's move on. Let's look at this one. Parentheses, do I got them? Yes, I do. And so I'm going to not really pay attention with the other stuff. I'm going to look just at the parentheses like a donut hole. And I'm going to look inside. Now, do I have parentheses within my parentheses? No. Do I have an exponent? Yes. 3 squared is 9. So this becomes 9. And then notice how I put all my other stuff down around it. Do I have a parenthesis? Yes, and I got to work inside. So 9 plus 1 is 10. And then I'm going to subtract and get 40. Questions? All right, number 6. Looks like a fun one. On your homework again, I'd rewrite this one just because I'm going to, because it's going to give me a little bit more space. Do I have parentheses? In fact, I got brackets, don't I? I have parentheses within my parentheses. So I'm going to kind of cover it up. And what am I going to do first within my parentheses? That's correct, my exponent. 5 squared is what? Very good, it's 25. So 25 plus 5, and then I've got to put all that other stuff around it. Now what do I do? Inside the second parentheses, very good. And so 25 plus 5 is 30. Now you can put the parentheses there if you wish, but because the number's by itself, you don't need to. I'm going to, because I think it might make it easier for you. Now what do? Add 5 plus 30 and I get 35. Should I put the brackets down? Why? Can I do this? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. So you're going to keep the brackets here. And what's 3 times 35? Very good, it's 105. Questions? Okay. All right, this example you're going to see in your homework, and so that's why I'm doing it. When you work with fractions, do you notice how we've been working up and down with our math? When you work with fractions, a little tip from Mrs. Medvec is rather than going up and down, let's move side to side, because that fraction bar can be kind of scary, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a few minutes. When you do these, the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to write 12K, the fraction bar, and use your lines on your paper. It's going to help you with that. And then 3 parentheses, k squared plus 4. And you don't need to write when k equals 2 in your homework. You don't need to do that. You can just plug your stuff in. Okay? But I do want you to write this expression. All right, I'm going to take out k now, and I'm going to plug in 2. So it's kind of like a check that we did in hands-on equations. I've got 12, and then I'm going to put in 2. And notice that I'm using my parentheses. Notice that when I put the 2 in my denominator, I put parentheses around it. Okay. You don't have to, but it's a good idea. Anytime you plug out a letter and put in a number, it's a good thing to do. Now, when you work the numerator and the denominator, they're like 2 separate problems. So you can do one step at a time in each the numerator and the denominator. So in the numerator, 12 times 2 is, that's correct, it's 24. Now let's take a look at the denominator. It's kind of tricky. Which one do you want to do first? 2 to the second. 2 to the second is 4. All right, my numerator is done. What am I going to do next to my denominator? 4 plus 4, that's correct. In the parentheses, right? Right? 24 over 24, and then I'm going to reduce it and make it 1. Questions? Something you don't understand? Do you notice how I worked it side to side? This is what it kind of looks like when you don't, and this is why I don't like students to do this. So they'll do this. Do you see how junky it gets? And then it's hard to tell where's the numerator, where's the denominator. That's where mistakes happen. So when you do fractions, don't work it up and down. Try to work it across as much as possible. It's just a little tip that I think is useful. All right, let's take a look at this next one now. I'm going to write the numerator, and then I'm going to put it over the denominator. And I'm going to take out my x now and put in my number. Please write the original problem when you do these. Sometimes students make a mistake just because they wrote the problem down wrong. So it's nice to see the original problem. All right, the numerator, what do I do first? What do I get? 18 plus 2 over 10. Okay, what do I get for my numerator? Over, answer, 2. Now, one student asked me earlier today, can I put 2 over 1? You can, but it's not in simplest form. Simplest form is just 2. You don't need it over 1. Okay. Questions on this?
What happened to that 6? Wait, never mind. Sorry.
You okay? Yeah, 6 times 3. Nope, good question. Okay, here is some love of knowledge for the day. All right, it is going to be section 1-2, which means chapter 1, section 2 of your textbook. It is going to be on page 10, and you're going to do problems 3 through 17 odd. You're going to do 23 to 29 odd. And you're going to do number 38. Now, sometimes I'll write your assignment like this. And I'll put a cursive O on the end of the 17. Would I assign you 3 through 170? Yeah. You're funny. Yeah. Just you. You cannot do all those problems. The rest of you, no, I wouldn't do that. Okay. It also doesn't go up to 170. That doesn't make sense. So if you see an O, generally I do a cursive one, but if you ever see an O, it's odd. Now, when I ask for odd, what's an example of an odd problem?
3, 5, 7.
That's right. 3, 5, 7. Okay. So you know what those mean, right? Also, in the back of your iPad, in that book area, remember when I asked you to download the selected answers? The odds are back there. All right, so I'll show you that a little bit later on how to find your answers in your iPad. So let's turn to page 10, and I'll start helping you on your assignment.